Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Ridge Forrester was already awake, staring at the black ceiling of the guest house because sleep had abandoned him long before. He knew his phone had buzzed on the nightstand before he looked at the screen. The number belonged to Deputy Chief Baker. Ridge let it ring 4 or 5 times before answering with a gravel-like voice. "We found her," Baker explained. "No hello, no softness. Or what's left of her." Ridge sat up slowly, the sheet sliding down his chest. "Where?" "The base of Point Dume. Mostly rocks. The tide dragged her into the cove. A fisherman spotted her at dawn." Ridge closed his eyes. The room tilted. "Are you sure it's Luna?" "Dental records are being processed, but the clothing matches. Purple outfit. She wore it to the wedding." Steffi and Finn's second effort at forever, which Luna had ruined with a gun and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ridge remembered her standing on the terrace later, barefoot, a wineglass dangling from her fingers, staring at the ocean as if it had personally offended her. "I'll be there," he answered, hanging up before Baker could offer unwanted condolences. By the time he arrived at the beach, the sky had turned the hue of a mending bruise. Yellow tape flapped between the wooden stakes. Uniforms moved like shadows across the wet sand. Baker met him at the perimeter, his expression unreadable. "She didn't drown," the deputy chief stated without explanation. "Impact did it. Multiple fractures.
Skull. Spine."
Ridge nodded once. "She hit the rocks first, then the water took her." He had known it somehow. Luna never did things gently. They had covered the body with a tarp the color of dried blood. Ridge felt a soundless rush of breath leave his lungs when Baker raised it. Luna laid on her back with one arm spread out, as if seeking for something just beyond of reach. Her brown hair spread across the rocks like seaweed. Her dress's purple silk had been torn in a dozen places, showing blue and violet-colored flesh. Her lips had parted. Her eyes, those piercing, deadly eyes that had previously looked at him with something like reverence, peered up at nothing. Ridge crouched. He did not touch her. He simply watched, remembering the devastation of a girl who had once been the smartest intern Forrester Creations had hired. "How did she get up there?" he asked. "Footprints," Baker explained. "One set leads to the edge." "Hers." "There's no struggle. No second set. It appears she walked." Ridge's throat worked. "She jumped." "That's the working theory." Ridge stood. The wind from the ocean swirled his jacket over his legs. He remembered the last time he saw Luna alive, 2 nights earlier in the design office after everyone else had gone home. She'd been seated at Hope's desk, rotating gently in her chair and humming something unrelated to music. "You shouldn't be here," he warned her. She had smiled, little and sad. "Where else could I go, Ridge? You're the only family I've ever had." He believed her for a brief moment. Then he remembered the pistol, the threats, and how she had pressed the identical smile against Poppy's cheek just before shooting Steffi. He had instructed her to leave Los Angeles and never return. She had laughed softly, like bells made of broken glass. "I don't have anywhere left to fall," she had stated. He now understood. Baker cleared his throat. "There is something else." Ridge gazed at her hand. Luna's right palm was clasped over a wet shred of paper that remained unbroken. Baker peeled apart her chilly fingers with gloved hands. The paper was an antique photograph, creased down the center. Ridge recognized it immediately. It was a photo Lee Finnegan had kept on her desk for years. Luna at 16, arms wrapped around her mother's waist, both of them smiling at some long-lost joke. Luna's looping handwriting on the back reads, "I'm sorry, Mom." Ridge took the photograph with barely trembling fingers. He placed it inside his pocket without seeking permission. Baker pretended not to notice. They allowed him to stay until the coroner's van arrived. Ridge watched as they lifted her onto the stretcher and closed the zipper on what remained of a girl who wanted more than anything to belong. He drove to Lee's condo first. The sun was fully risen and blaring off downtown's glass towers. Lee opened the door, still dressed in her robe, her eyes swollen from crying or lack of sleep, Ridge couldn't tell.
They found her, he said.
Lee's knees buckled. Ridge caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed little in his arms, like a bird with hollow bones. She shook the front of his shirt without saying anything. I have something for you, he murmured, placing a moist snapshot in her palm. Lee looked at it for a long time. When she flipped it over and read the 3 words, something within her burst open. A low, feral sound erupted from her throat. Ridge held her while she screamed into his chest, screaming until her voice broke and all that remained was the moist sound of breathing. When she eventually pulled away, her face was drenched, but her eyes were dry and aged. Did she suffer? She asked. Ridge considered the pebbles, the height, and how Luna's body twirled in midair like a purple comet. No, he lied. It was quick. Lee agreed, believing him, because she had to. He left her sitting on the couch, the photograph pressed against her heart. Next, he went to prison. Bill Spencer was waiting in the visitation room, his orange jumpsuit too glaring against the artificial lighting. He appeared slimmer, harder, and the creases around his eyes were profound. They told me, Bill stated before Ridge could respond. Is this true? Ridge sat across from him. Bill gazed at the table between them. She's gone. His hands were handcuffed, but the chain was long enough for him to lift one and brush it against his mouth. I keep thinking about the first time I saw her, he told me. She walked into my office with that dumb internship badge pinned improperly, grinning like she had won the lottery. They asked whether I wanted coffee. Black, 2 sugars. That is exactly how I take it. I thought, this kid's going to be trouble. He laughed once, making a sound like shredding paper. She was mine, he muttered. DNA says so. And I threw her away the moment it became inconvenient. Ridge said nothing. There was nothing to say. Bill looked up. Has she left a note? Only for her mother. Bill's expression contorted. He bent forward till his forehead met the table, his shoulders quivering with silent sobbing. Ridge waited till the storm passed. Then he stood. I have to tell Poppy, he explained. Bill did not look up. Tell her I'm sorry, he said. Tell her I'm the sorriest bastard who ever lived. Ridge left him there, crying into the scarred Formica. Poppy was at the beach house that she had previously occupied with Luna. The property appeared abandoned, curtains drawn, mail overflowing the box. Ridge banged twice. When no one answered, he used the key Lee had given him months before, when everyone still believed in new beginnings. He discovered Poppy in Luna's bedroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by open boxes. Yearbooks, plush animals, and a prom dress still wrapped in plastic. Poppy held a child's picture, 2 stick figures named Mommy and Luna under a yellow crayon sun. She did not seem shocked to see him. She used to sleep with this under her pillow, Poppy stated in a raspy voice. Although she was too old for it, Ridge crouched next her, saying it reminded her of a simpler period. They found her, Poppy. Poppy nodded slowly, as if she knew exactly what had happened. Perhaps mothers usually do. Was she alone? She asked. Yes. Poppy closed her eyes. A tear slipped from between her lashes and followed the slope of her face. I told her everything would be fine, she muttered. That night, she came to me, crying, because Bill had rejected her. I informed her that blood does not make a family. Love does. I lied. I should have held her tighter. Should have locked the doors. Should have. She was unable to finish. Ridge drew her into his arms and allowed her to cry on his neck until his shirt soaked through. When the tears stopped, Poppy drew back and gazed at him with eyes that had seen too much. Promise me anything, Ridge. Anything. Don't let them make her a monster. The headlines and true crime podcasts will claim she was evil. We were born bad. Promise me you'll remember the little girl who picked dandelions and thought they were wishes. Ridge swallowed hard. I promise. He stayed until the sun went down, helping her load Luna's belongings into boxes labeled Keep and Donate. They toiled in silence, interrupted only by the sounds of tape ripping and cardboard folding. When the last box was shut, Poppy stood in the empty room, slowly turning in a circle. It's too quiet, she explained. Ridge did not inform her that it would constantly be too quiet now. The funeral was small. Just family, what remained of it. They held it at a private cemetery above the seaside because Lee stated that Luna had always enjoyed the sound of waves. The casket was closed. Nobody argued. Steffi came even though she did not have to. She stood apart from the others, sunglasses covering her eyes, which still trembled at rapid movements. Finn clutched her hand so hard that his knuckles turned white. Hope arrived too, pallid and mute. She placed a single white orchid on the casket, the flower Luna had worn in her hair the first time she stepped into Forrester Creations, brilliant as a promise. Ridge delivered the eulogy since no one else could find words. Luna Nozawa was many things, he said, his voice carried by the sea breeze. Brilliant, troubled,
Fierce. Lost.
she entered our lives like a hurricane and exited the same way. We'll never fully grasp what drove her to the brink. Perhaps it was hopelessness. Perhaps it was guilt. Perhaps it was the final desperate deed of a girl who thought she had burned every bridge behind her. He paused, gazing out at the small crowd of mourners. But I knew her before all of that. I know the girl who stayed late to fix a hem and delivered coffee to security officers at 3 a.m. just because they appeared fatigued. That girl exists. She was real. And she deserved better than anything any of us could offer her. His voice trembled on the final syllable. He did not try to hide it. When he stepped down, Lee approached the casket. She set the childish painting of a yellow sun and two stick figures holding hands on the polished wood surface. "Goodbye, my baby," she whispered. "Wait for me on the other side of the stars." They dropped Luna to the ground while gulls circled overhead. The water bellowed its ancient and indifferent melody. They eventually met at the Forrester mansion, since no one knew where else to go. Eric served scotch to the males and chamomile tea to the women who couldn't handle anything stronger. Conversation was limited. Brooke discovered Ridge on the patio, marveling at the city lights below. "You did good today," she replied softly. "Did I?" He did not glance at her. "I feel like I stood up there and lied to everyone. Pretty words about a girl who attempted to murder my daughter." Brooke wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. "You said the truth. All of it. That's more than most people can do." He turned to embrace her. She was 23, Brooke. She was 23 years old and thought jumping was the only way out. Brooke rested her head on his chest. Some doors only opened from the inside. They stood there till the stars appeared, two people supporting each other because the alternative was falling. Weeks later, on a morning so clear that the horizon appeared sharp enough to cut glass, Ridge returned to Point Dumay alone. He parked at the end of the road and walked along the short path to the cliff's edge. Someone had left flowers, white roses dying in the sunlight. Luna's name was written carefully in block letters on a little wooden crucifix. Ridge sat on the rocks and removed the photograph from his wallet, which Luna had died holding. It was crumpled now, and the edges were soft from handling. He turned it over to read the 3 words again. "I apologize, Mom." He considered all the regrets that would never be expressed now. Sorry about the falsehoods. Sorry about the gun. Sorry for the blood on the patio and the dread in Steffi's eyes. Luna apologized for every moment she felt unloved, unmoored, and hideous. Ridge removed a pen from his jacket. On the white border beneath the portrait, he penned 4 words in his own handwriting. "We're sorry, Luna." Then he placed the photo beneath the cross, weighing it down with a stone to keep the wind from blowing it away. He stayed until the tide shifted and the sun rose high enough to scorch the mist off the sea. When he finally got up, his knees broke like old wood. As he walked back to the car, he did not look back. Some views were only needed once. Luna's body was discovered after she fell from a cliff into the water, but the narrative of how and what happened next was far more intricate, emotional, and disturbing than anyone in Los Angeles could have predicted. At first, there was only one terrifying report from the authorities. A woman washed ashore after a fall, and her identity was confirmed as Luna, a young woman whose connections to the Forresters, Logans, and the complicated world of Forrester Creations had always made her presence feel both delicate and crucial. But the instant her name was revealed, the shock spread, striking each character with a different force and triggering a chain of memories, regrets, and unresolved questions. For many, Luna had always appeared to be someone who would be shielded from the darkest corners of their world. Her gentle demeanor, sincere desire to prove herself, and sweet, idealistic vision of what her life could be had captivated practically everyone she met. She did not fit the mold of the normal scandals that characterized the Forrester orbit. Yet here she was, lost in ways no one had anticipated, leaving behind more pain than anybody imagined she possessed. The hours leading up to her fall were intensely scrutinized. What had brought her to the cliffside? Was she alone? Was it an accident? Or did the storm that raged around the shore that night have an impact? Those questions preoccupied everyone who cared about her, particularly RJ. Few things have ever broken him as much as the news. He watched their last discussion several times, looking for some sign or signal that she was in distress, something he should have spotted but didn't. Luna had recently become quieter and more introspective, which RJ attributed to work-related stress or her desire to carve out her own identity inside the organization. But now he wondered whether there had been more, a deeper conflict she had never shown. Her mother, Poppy, arrived at the morgue, her eyes sunken with anguish. She proceeded as if each step required more effort than she possessed, clinging to one hope, that the authorities had made a mistake. But when she met Luna, all hope faded. Poppy gently brushed her daughter's hair away from her face, much as she had done when Luna was a youngster. She whispered apologies she had been carrying for years, apologies for what she couldn't offer her, the stability she failed to provide, and the chaos that Luna had worked so hard to overcome. Luna had always been Poppy's brightest moment, proof that she had done at least one thing correctly in a life full of wrong turns. Losing her felt like losing her identity, anchor, and future. The Forresters gathered quietly to mourn in their own ways. Some people conveyed their grief by telling anecdotes about Luna's kindness, while others stood in silent astonishment, unable to understand the severity of the loss. Brooke, who had become enamored of Luna's kind personality, found herself comforting RJ while dealing with her own loss. Ridge provided encouragement in his stern, fatherly manner, but even he couldn't hide the sadness in his voice. As the story of Luna's fall spread, so did speculation regarding the circumstances. The police inquiry began quickly, and while preliminary results indicated an accident, slippery rocks, heavy gusts, and dangerous tides, some remained skeptical. The cliff where she fell was recognized for both its beauty and its danger. People went there to contemplate, clear their minds, and even to flee. But Luna was not the sort to take unnecessary chances. She was not impulsive. She was not reckless. The idea that she would merely stroll too near to the edge seemed strange to those who knew her best. RJ couldn't stop himself from visiting the cliffs. He stood at the edge where the rocks met the sky, gazing down at the churning seas. He envisioned her standing there, perhaps crying, searching for meaning, or overwhelmed by something he hadn't noticed. The thought ripped at him. He shouted her name into the wind, as if she might hear him and answer the problems that troubled him. There was simply the sound of the water, indifferent and endless. Days passed, and memories of Luna permeated the corridors of Forrester Creations. Her sketches stayed on the drafting table. Her laughter remained in the thoughts of everyone who had worked beside her. Even the interns spoke of her with admiration, recalling how she had taken the time to guide them when she didn't need to. Everyone seemed to have a moment, large or small, that demonstrated how important she was. However, grief was not the only thing growing. Suspicion crept in gradually, casting shadows beneath the sorrow. Some began to speculate about the events that led up to her fall. Had Luna been under pressure? Had she gotten into a fight with anyone? Had she confided in someone about issues that no one else knew about? Poppy's shattered state suggested that Luna had been dealing with more than she let on. She addressed Luna's fears. Fear of disappointing people, fear of being judged for decisions she didn't completely comprehend, and fear of secrets that weren't hers but weighed heavily on her. One particular secret hung heavily between Poppy and Lee, including family, ancestry, and long-buried truths. Lee's response to Luna's death was complicated. Her anguish was palpable, but it was tinged with remorse and something sharper, regret for words shouted in rage, for charges that could never be taken back. Lee was not at blame for what transpired, but her last exchanges with Luna resurfaced in her thoughts with terrible clarity. She had pushed too hard, judged too fast, and failed to recognize Luna's fragility until it was too late.